You are listening to the Booktrospective Podcast, a podcast for all types of books. And even though we read all types of books across all different types of genres, we want to give a disclaimer. Many of our books and a lot of our content sometimes is intended for mature audiences. And we don't believe in censorship, but we do want our listeners to have the opportunity to decide if our episode or podcast is good for them. So with that, let's get into the episode. Hey, it's Dominique.
And Keely.
You're listening to Booktrospective, and this week we have a special guest. We have Ruby Martinez, author of An Embroidery of Souls, and I will do like a full recap, and I always kind of talk about the authors and things like that. So, very happy to have you on. I've heard a lot of great things. Yeah. I know you and Keely know each other, but I'm going to mute, and Keely's going to ask some questions to get us started.
Perfect. I will be here. Lovely. Happy to be on. So
we'll start out with, who is Ruby Martinez? Can we can be deep or simple, however you want to answer the question. Who are you? Who do you want? What do you want your readers to know about you?
Yeah, no, I was looking at that question and I was like, oh man, we're starting off with a hard question, which maybe should be an easy question because it's just talking about who I am. So I could maybe go the deep philosophical approach, but I think I'm just going to go the very simple, less brainy approach because I don't have as much brain space these days. So I would say Ruby Martinez. My business card says it pretty accurately. It has my name at the top, and then underneath it, it says author, therapist, book, or couch potato. And I feel like that is a very accurate description of who I am. These days, the couch potato is a little bit more aspirational since I spend a lot of my time chasing down my chaos demon, aka my toddler, affectionate chaos demon. I say that with lots of love. So, but yeah, author, therapist, couch potato, I think sums me up pretty well. So,
and can you give us a book pitch? What is An Embroidery of Souls about? I saw your little interview of the 30-second book pitch from, what was it? Romance Book Con.
Yeah, Romantasy Book Con. Absolutely. Yeah, this is the best time to ask me for a book pitch because I had to practice it a bunch. The first person who asked me for a pitch there, I froze up and couldn't do it, but I've since rehearsed. So An Embroidery of Souls follows two protagonists, Jade and Lucas. So Jade is a thread speaker. She can see people's souls and transfer their qualities using embroidery. Lucas is just a very soft, sweet, down on his luck cinnamon roll kind of guy. But there is a serial killer in their city, killing people and gouging out their eyes and all sorts of, kind of serial killer stuff. And so the two of them end up teaming up to solve the crime, catch the killer. But in the process, they discover this killer isn't just taking lives, but stealing souls. And soon they risk becoming the next victims as they get closer. So there's a lot of other stuff that, we'll talk about more as the podcast goes on. Obviously, lots of romance, creepy monsters, embroidery magic, anxiety representation, which I saw you have questions about, and I can't wait to talk about, and all sorts of fun things. So, and it's a young adult fantasy romance, whatever you call it. Probably should have started with the genre and age range, but, we tacked it on there at the end. We got it in there, so.
Okay, so what inspired you to write An Embroidery of Souls?
That is also a good question. I don't know if I've been asked that one yet. I think on a very simple level, there was a very compelling idea and I really wanted to write about it. But on a deeper level, I think a lot of the inspiration came from my work as a therapist and my own struggles with anxiety and mental health. So I'll talk more about Jade's arc especially. There's questions about that and Lucas's arc too. But for Jade, I was really inspired by my own struggles with anxiety and I really wanted to see a protagonist like that going through some of what I went through and getting the messages that quite frankly I need to hear in a fantasy novel. Lucas I'll talk about a little more because there aren't questions about him. But I work with a lot of clients who struggle with self-sacrifice. And to be clear, Lucas isn't based on any individual client. That would be highly unethical. Report me to the board if that was the case. But in general, I see these trends with clients where they're just breaking their back to support the people they love and to support the people around them. And it seems like such a wonderful, kind, noble thing. And in the right doses, it absolutely is all of those things. But when it becomes unbalanced and you're only caring for other people and not caring for yourself, I've seen with my clients how that absolutely breaks them down and withers them away. And it's a really painful process. And it can be kind of a weird thing as a therapist to be like, have you considered not doing so many nice things for other people? You know, you don't necessarily see that in the job description. But all my clients, watching them grow and transform and do the incredible work they do, it made me want to write about someone else going through a similar pain and overcoming like a similar struggle. So a lot of the inspiration comes from my work and my own mental health struggles. So
love that. And yes, we will get into more of that later. But
yes,
the world pulls from Mexican and German lore and culture. Can you tell me what drew you to blend those specific influences?
Absolutely. This is a fun question to get because it's actually like a really easy one to answer. I don't have to think about it super hard. So the world building is based on Mexico and Germany, and I picked those ones because they're both part of my heritage. I knew I wanted to do a country based on Mexico because I was raised to be so proud of that heritage. It was something that was celebrated and like open and like talked about and just like a really exciting, wonderful piece of my heritage. And so I knew I wanted to do that. The German heritage is not as celebrated in my family. Not that it's like a shame thing. It's just not what everyone's like super excited about. And so when I was thinking about what else I wanted to base the world off, I thought, what a wonderful way to connect with a piece of myself that I don't know as much about and get to learn more about. So one part was about celebrating this piece that I've learned to love, and one was about growing to love and learn more about a piece that I hadn't known much about. And I just kind of blended them together. And, you know, I was going to say it's a fun time. I hate world building. So I would say it's about as fun as world building could be, which is, in my opinion, not very fun, but, you know, other people love it. And hopefully I did an okay job in the actual book. So
I think you did a great job. So
victory. Awesome. Thank you, Keely.
Next question is a bit wordy, so
take your time. You're good.
Hang there with me. But throughout this book, we see such a growth in Jade's character, who begins the book overcome with anxiety and ends the book doing the scary things despite the anxiety. Can you tell us a bit about why you decided to bring this anxiety representation to your story, and what do you hope readers take away from her journey?
That is a wonderful question. Thank you for asking me that question. It's so fun to talk about these things. I already talked about it a little bit, but so I love romantasy and fantasy. I read so much of these stories, and very often it's like, am I allowed to swear on this podcast? Is that allowed? Okay, cool. It's like the very badass, like kind of sassy, like spiky, like heroines who are like doing their thing and, you know, just generally kicking ass. And don't get me wrong, I love those heroines. There's like no shade on them. I have like read them before. My next heroine in my next book, I call her Stabby Crabby because she is very stabby crabby. So like there's absolutely no shade on that. But I shouldn't say never, but I rarely saw heroines who I felt were a little bit more like myself, of a little shy and a little awkward and a lot maybe afraid of the world at times and having a hard time. And it can be such an overwhelming thing to face our regular world with all its scary things. Like I can't even imagine a fantasy world with like all the magic and creepy serial killers and all that stuff like in this one. And so I really wanted to put a piece of myself into this novel and also show all the other readers that they could see pieces of themselves in the book, because I think it's a really powerful thing to find ourselves between the pages of a book, right? And to show that this kind of character can go on adventures and do all the cool things. And she's probably going to be a lot more scared and a lot more awkward about it, maybe, than all of our stabby, crabby heroines, but she's still doing the thing. So that's a big reason why I wanted to. What I hope readers take away, to answer your second question in the question, it's actually right there in the dedication of the book. So the book is also dedicated to my husband because I love him. He's great, very awesome, wonderful man. But I also dedicated the book to the worry warriors out there. And I believe it says something along the lines of, because you're braver than you know and you're more capable than you feel. And that's really what I want readers to take away. So you don't have to read the book to get that. I certainly hope people do. I think it's a lot more resonant if you actually like read the story and have that to back it up, right? But I think a lot of times with anxiety, the people I work with, and I know myself as well, tend to overestimate the size of the threat. They also underestimate their ability to deal with the threat. They underestimate their bravery and their capability. So a big part of my work is gently and kindly encouraging people like, okay, like I know this thing is scary, but come on, how can you do it? Let's figure it out. Let's problem solve. Let's talk about it. I believe in you, right? And then they do the thing and usually it's fine. Either it goes well and they see that they can do the thing, or it goes poorly and they still handle it and they navigate it and it's okay. And so I really want people to be able to take away that lesson from reading An Embroidery of Souls, and also hopefully have a fun time because it's a romantic murder mystery fantasy book too, you know? So
I really appreciate, as someone who myself deals with anxiety, I appreciate a main character at that, who, you know, is dealing with anxiety on a daily basis as well. And it's just different than what we see all the time. So I appreciated that for sure. So every episode that we record, our thing is, what is one word that you use to describe it? It's so hard for us, like 95% of the time.
I appreciate the head start because I definitely would have been an awkward, bumbling mess if you hadn't sent me the questions in advance. I may still be an awkward, bumbling mess, but hopefully less so. But I kind of did like a little bit of a free association for this one. I was like, what's the first word that comes to mind? Like, don't overthink it. And the first word that came to my mind for An Embroidery of Souls was wholesome, which may be surprising because there's literally a serial killer who is gouging out people's eyes and they need to solve the crime. So I will not pretend there are not like darker elements or darker parts of this. There absolutely are. And when I think about what the book is about at its core, it's about two characters who are very sweet and vulnerable and kind, both of them, who are going on this journey together and supporting each other and falling in love. And through like falling in love and that support, like they both help each other to heal, right? And so I think that's just a very sweet, wholesome kind of, you know, part of the book. And it makes me think of this scene from about 3/4 of the way through when, you know, part of Jade's arc is not being protected so much. And in this scene, you know, Lucas has this urge to protect her from her fear of like crowds and chaos and all these things. And she's like, nope, I appreciate that, but let's do it together instead of you protecting me. And they hold hands and they like run out in the rain and they're both there for each other. And I feel like if I had to encapsulate the book into one scene, it would be that moment. And that just feels like such a wholesome, tender moment to me. So I would say wholesome, with, you know, some caveats that there are some other words as well that we could use to describe it.
Well, I love that. And I think that this will conclude the spoiler-free section. So we can get more detail. What was the research process like for An Embroidery of Souls? Any fun or funny stories that came along with like the world building? I saw one of your videos on Instagram about the naming of the like ocean or whatever. So like if you can include that as well.
I will absolutely include that. I wasn't expecting to talk about that one. So the world building and the research process, really, most of the research I do is for world building. Some people get like super into world building and I absolutely applaud and commend and have the utmost respect for them. But for me, like world building is the thing like I have to do in order to like get to write all the fun parts and the romance and the adventure and all that stuff. So I make myself sit down and do world building. But I just do a lot of Googling. So for this book, it was obviously based on Mexico and Germany. And then the time period was around the 1860s. So I did a lot of Googling on like, what do people in Mexico wear in the 1860s? What do people in Germany eat? And like all sorts of things. And I have this big world building document and it has all these different sections like architecture, religion, magic, all that stuff. Obviously I guess I could have researched magic. I didn't research magic. I just kind of pulled that out of somewhere in the deep recesses of my brain. But the rest, I compiled it into this document. And of course, I put a twist on most of it because this isn't historical fantasy. Thank goodness. It would be so inaccurate. It is second world fantasy that's just inspired by these things. So I would research and then I'd give it my own kind of twist. And usually I'll put the links in the document too. So if I want to go back and look at them, I can find it. So I definitely, you know, I didn't hit up the library or read any books. I was like, we're going to see what my favorite search engine has. And after that, you know, it's a fantasy novel. We're just going to make the rest of it up. But to give the funny story that you wanted me to mention, I hate naming things. Ask any fantasy author. I've never met a fantasy author who's like, I love naming things. Naming things is the worst. It is so hard. And in my revisions for this book, one of the things I had to do was add a little more world building and I had to name an ocean and I didn't know what to name it. And so naturally I asked my husband. The thing about asking my husband that question is every time I ask him something like that, he just says Jimmy John's after the sandwich shop Jimmy John's. I'll ask him completely unrelated questions. I'll be like, honey, like, what's the weather like today? And he'll be like, Jimmy John. I don't know why he does it. It's just a weird little thing. It's kind of a joke between us. And so I asked him that question knowing 100% he was going to say Jimmy John's, but just kind of like hoping like he would say an ocean name that would work for a fantasy novel. But he said Jimmy John, and so I ended up naming it the Jamone Ocean because I just didn't feel like putting in the work. And so it's the ocean in An Embroidery of Souls is indirectly named after Jimmy John's, the sandwich shop.
And I found that hilarious. So
I'm glad you had fun with that.
I was giggling, but let's see, what else did we have? Is there a scene that you liked but didn't make the final cut?
Yes. And I'm glad this is in the spoiler section because I didn't realize it would be. And I was like, oh, this is very hard to talk about. So spoilers, intense spoilers in the next minute or so of conversation. So the killer is the queen, right? We don't know she's evil. And then she has Cora Ramos, the gang leader, is the queen's sister. And you don't find that out until later. And the queen had tried to kill her and then failed and then kind of just let her go off and do her own thing, whatever. But there is this scene in the book where towards the end, Lucas has been captured by the queen and she also captures Cora and brings Cora down there. And so you get to see the two sisters like interacting, like Lucas gets to witness it and kind of find out what's going on. And I feel like that was such like a fun, like really rich relationship that I could have explored even more, I think, if I had the space. And I had actually totally forgotten about the scene. And when I saw this question, I have like a document of all the scenes and snippets that I had to delete, but I liked them. So I didn't want to just like banish them to the never or whatever. And I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about this one, but it was such a fun scene. I had to take it cut it because it was messing with the pacing and it was something that could be told versus being shown. But I think if we had more words, if it wasn't messing with the pacing, it could have been a fun thing to include. So I would say that scene is one that didn't make the cut, but had some good merits.
Oh, yeah. I thought this one was a cool and kooky question. But if Jade walked into a bookstore, what section would she walk to first?
I got such a kick out of this question. That is a great one. So I think the section she would go to first and the section she wants to go to are probably two different sections. I think she would probably go to like the nonfiction first and like look at all the more, I don't know, like the psychology titles or like the nature titles or something a little bit more sciencey. And then I think she would probably she would read Romantasy. And I feel like the reason for that is she's an anxious girl. She's in her head. She's going to be like, oh my gosh, are people going to judge me for reading my smutty werewolf books or whatever? Shout out to Allie Hazelwood, right? So I think she would feel a little insecure, which she does not need to. There's nothing wrong with loving Romantasy. I love Romantasy. So I think she'd head over to something she thought was more socially palatable, but then she'd make her way to Romantasy. And I think she probably would love it for the same reason that I do, of it allows you to have these grand, romantic, like fun adventures, daring adventures, but all from the safety and comfort of your own home. And while she finishes the book going on her own adventures, I do think Jade is still an introvert who likes to have her comfy, cozy own space. So I really think that she'd pick up a couple books in the Romantasy section, even if she didn't necessarily start there.
I love that.
I'm glad.
Yeah. I know this question wasn't in what I sent you, but what about Lucas? If he walked into a bookstore, what would he go to first?
Oh man, what would Lucas go to? You know what? I think he might be the guy who reads nonfiction, who actually enjoys nonfiction. I can see him actually reading like a bunch of self-help books and like they really resonate and he's like trying so hard to take heart with them and like really listen, but he has like a hard time, but I think they're really meaningful. So I can totally see Lucas like really enjoying like a good self-help book. Whereas interestingly, as a therapist, I cannot make myself read self-help books. I'm like, there's no romance or kissing or magic. Like I can't do it. But I think if I had to guess, I feel like that's probably where Lucas would head. So,
did any of the characters take over the story or surprise you while writing?
Yeah, the character who surprised me most was definitely Cora Ramos. So you meet her in like the first act. She's like this gang leader. She operates out of the sewers, so a lot of people call her the Underqueen. And when I started writing, like, she was just the gang leader, I needed Lucas to have a reason to search for the killer, and it made sense, so she was there for the plot. But as I was writing, I was like, but what if she was like the queen's sister, like the long dead sister who's not actually dead? Wouldn't that be interesting? And I didn't think that until the end of the first act, which is very rare for me in the sense that I'm an intense plotter, an intense planner. I know like everything that's going to happen before I start writing that first chapter. But she absolutely surprised me. And so like I looked back, I was like, what do I need to revise or change to make this work? And I actually didn't need to make any changes. All the foreshadowing was there. I think my subconscious was like, this is a good idea, Ruby. And it just took me a little longer for my conscious mind to figure it out. But she definitely surprised me. And if I ever were to write a spin-off novel, I don't know how that would work or if anyone would ever pay me for it. Not that, I've gotten paid for most of the books that I've written, but I think if I were to write a spin-off, it would probably be about Cora in some capacity because I just think she's a really interesting character that could absolutely get her own book devoted to her.
Yeah, if you were to write a spinoff about Cora, I would totally read it. I was not expecting that twist of them being sisters. So I was like, what?
Oh my God. Yeah, no, you and me both.
I think she's an interesting character for sure.
Cool. I'm glad that I'm not just sitting here thinking that because I created her. So.
And I have one more question that I wrote down, but we can definitely continue talking and getting more into, the book. But
of course,
was there a scene that completely changed between your first and final draft?
Yes, this was another one. I mean, there are multiple scenes, things that got cut, but this was another one I had to go back and look at my, graveyard of lost scenes and all that. And I had actually forgotten that the I love you scene changed. So obviously, like in most romances, you're going to get the I love you scene. And currently it is, oh wait, we can talk about spoilers here. So it's at the very end, Lucas is like, he's killed by the queen basically. And, Jade saves him a little while later. But as he's dying, like they have their I love you moment. And I really like that in the final draft. I think it's really dramatic and hopefully, it hits with readers and all that. But another kind of I love you scene I like is kind of the softer, more casual, just like the, hey, like, just so you know, like I love you, kind of like that kind of scene with that kind of mood. And originally in the first draft, and I don't know how many drafts after, that was more of the mood that this one took. It was right before they went into like the throne room to like confront the queen, confront the killer, all that. Lucas was kind of like, I just want you to know, like, I love you and all that. And they have this really sweet kind of soft, less urgent moment. And I got some feedback that made me change that. And I honestly can't remember what it was, but I was reading that scene back and I really like how it is in the final published version. But I also like this other one. And I think it has merit too. So I think, they both have their pros and cons and it's hard to get an I love you scene right. I actually had to rewrite it in this other book I'm drafting now, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. So,
let's see. Okay. So I haven't talked about the embroidery part of it, I guess. What made you decide like that was your magic, and also like the stitching in the skin, the tattooing, I should say.
Oh yeah. Oh man, no one's asked me about the tattoo part specifically. So where the embroidery magic came from, I honestly do not know where that came from in my brain. I like to tell people, like, I really wish that, like, I could be like, my grandmother used to embroider, and I'd sit and I'd watch her, and it inspired me, and a piece of her lives on in this book. But I don't believe either of my grandmothers embroidered. So that would be, like, sweet and inspirational, but it also would just be a lie. I think it mostly came from this, like, what if? Wouldn't that be cool if this was based on embroidery? And also I was trying to be a little bit business savvy. I was like, oh, maybe that's something that's marketable. Maybe that's something like an agent and like an editor would be interested in. So it's a lot less wholesome and a lot more just somewhere in the deep recesses of my brain was this idea. As for like the tattoo piece, I don't really, oh, you know what? I think I know. I had to think about that for a second. So there's this scene in the book where Jade and Lucas need to escape from, there's this character called the Tracker, right? And they're on his ship. And I was like, wouldn't it be like badass if like to escape him, like Jade has to like stitch into her own like skin or something for some reason? Like, what if it just had to be like, cause she's like this scared, anxious character. I was like, we need to show that she's also badass. Like, what if she did that? And I thought that would be really cool. And then from there, this idea of like thread tattoos and like stitching into skin and needing at least once living manner for like thread magic to work, it kind of came out of like, I really just wanted to make her badass in that one specific scene. And it all came from that.
Yeah, I was like,
yeah, no, I actually, you'll have to thank my editor because it was a little bit more graphic, and she was like, this is a young adult book. Can we tone it down? Which is how like now in the final draft, she stitches into like a patch and then just puts that patch onto people's skin and it like magically absorbs. But in the original draft, it was not that at all. So you'll have to thank my editor because it is kind of a little, I can see that. I can understand that reaction.
That's funny. Yeah. So you've already kind of mentioned it. You said it's a standalone, which I'd ask Keely because I don't know if this is a question, but I feel like so many times, like now, like a lot of fantasy, romantic, they're series. So I did appreciate that. I wasn't sure because I also don't like read blurbs or anything. So I tried to go.
You just kind of went in.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, I wonder if this, and I'm like, I guess I could see like that window, but I appreciated it being a standalone. Was that always your thought?
That was definitely my intention when you're querying. So it's like really bleak trying to get published because you have to get an agent and then you have to go on sub and you have to get an editor, and it's very hard. And so there's a lot of advice that people throw out there, and some of the advice is write a standalone because it's a lot easier to sell a standalone. And so I was really trying to follow that advice. So that's kind of like the more business end of it. I've also discovered I started out writing series, and it's like really hard to write a series, you guys. Like I was so bad when I was doing it. I just didn't understand how badly I was doing it. I like wasn't worried. But once I learned a little bit more, I was like, oh my, like how do you stretch a character arc out over like 2 or 3 books? Like much easier to just have the one story and tie it all up in a neat little bow, because I do love my neat little bows. So it was definitely partially like a let's just take advice and try and do a standalone concept. But also now that I've started writing standalones, and Embroidery of Souls was the second standalone I've written, I just really love having a nice, neat standalone story. And I think I'm going to stay in that standalone space at least for a while. Unless someone's like, Ruby, write a series, we'll pay you for it. No one's doing that right now, though, so we're going to stick with standalones.
Is there a question that you wished people asked you about your book?
Oh, man. I didn't think about this one in advance. I will say a lot of people ask me about Jade and her anxiety and her arc, which I love because that is so personal to me. And I think Lucas also has his own really valuable, really important arc. And I think sometimes he falls a little bit in Jade's shadow, which he's a sweet cinnamon roll man. He would not mind that, but I think he deserves his day in the sun too. So I feel like it's less of a specific question. And I love it when Lucas gets a little bit more attention as well, because he's very near and dear to my heart too.
And I planned on talking about Lucas, so that's good. So in the story, we see Lucas being the pretty much caretaker for his family. And you've kind of talked about, that being
a little bit
putting your needs aside to
the self-sacrifice.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us more about Lucas and his character arc?
Absolutely, yeah. So Lucas, like I always talk about him, he's a very soft, kind of insecure cinnamon roll character. I've discovered that I'm only capable of writing soft, sweet men. I can read a morally gray man and have fun with him just fine, but I just can't write that apparently. But his character arc is all about, you mentioned Keely, he cares for his family, and it is a very dire situation. His family is living in poverty. And so he feels this immense responsibility, and he always puts them first. He never meets his own needs if he has to meet their needs, right? And he feels like if he does anything for himself, then he's selfish, which is it's a very real, poignant place a lot of people in our real world find themselves in, of I am so burnt out, I need to take care of myself, but if I don't do this thing? What if my child loses their housing, or what if my grandchild like goes hungry or like something like that? It's very difficult to find that balance. And Lucas is very much struggling to find that balance. And by the end of the book, he's able to strike it more and realize, you know, I do need, like, it's important to take care of other people. Like, you can't just be like, I'm a jerk, everyone for themselves, like, screw everyone else, right? But he also needs to take care of himself and prioritize his own needs at times, which he's able to do because his family's in a little bit more of a secure place at the end of the novel. But in the final scene, he makes the choice to join Jade on her journey out at sea with Cora, right? And because it's something that he wants to do, and his family encourages him. And I really like that ending for him. I think that's where he needed to end up. So.
And we also have a moment in the book where we find out that Jade had a part to play in Lucas's dad's death.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit and just the journey that they both had to take with that particular instance?
Yes. That was one of my better brain children, I think, of like, what if Jade had played a role in Lucas's dad's death? So Lucas, his dad is a big part of like the lie he believes at the beginning of the novel. He's trying to follow in his dad's footsteps and take care of everyone, right? And his dad died, I think like 5 or so years prior to the novel's beginning. And he believes it was natural causes. That's what it looked like. But in reality, so thread speakers like Jade can kill people using their talents. And a bit of a spoiler, not a bit, it is a spoiler. So Jade stitched the thread portrait that was used to kill Lucas's dad, but she didn't actually take the life thread out. Her mother did, which is how you actually kill someone. And they did it on the Queen's orders. Her mom wasn't like, let's go murder an innocent guy. That wasn't what it was like. But shortly after the first act, Jade realizes like, oh my gosh, Lucas's dad is the one who like, I played this role in his death. And of course she feels awful about that. So it's a really great piece of their tension of she knows and he doesn't know. And it's kind of the thing that's like pulling them apart for a long time. And the thing that leads to their third act breakup. So lots of fun tension there. I guess I think it's fun tension. That makes me sound really mean. I feel like I'm losing thread of the initial question, but did I answer it? I can't even remember what I was. Okay, I answered it. Cool. Yeah. So it's kind of gives it a little bit of a forbidden romance element, I will say.
And so we also have just kind of some fun general questions, like, do you have
Please.
a reading ritual?
Oh man, I feel like my old reading ritual was probably sit by my bird, get all snuggly, always like sweatpants and like fun stuff, and then definitely have like a snack I could like munch on or like a hot chocolate I could sip. Now that I have a toddler, my reading ritual is, oh my gosh, I have a few minutes. Let's bring up my book on my phone and read as much as I can while I actually have time. And that's often while I'm rocking her to sleep because she's not a good sleeper. I'm very sleep deprived, or just the few minutes between her bath and her going to bed when that's my husband's part of the routine. So now it's just whenever I can get it, there is reading time.
I think you normally like to ask, like, what was your last 5-star read?
Oh,
and
this is actually go ahead.
What makes a 5-star read for you?
Oh, I love that add-on. So this is actually perfect because I just finished my last 5-star read like 2 days ago, so it's fresh in my mind. It was The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. So good. This one, it's like a very cozy romantic fantasy, and I don't read a lot of cozy fantasy, but part of what made it a 5-star was like there's a sentient talking plant, which is like super fun, and it's just a really sweet atmosphere with like this really cozy island. And all this really fun stuff. And the love interest is a cinnamon roll, which you guys know that I love because that's what I write, And so lots of fun things and very creative. What really makes a read go from like 3 or 4 stars to 5 stars to me, or from like good to great, is when it's not like just a fun time and a great plot, but when there is that character arc and that emotional journey that is very resonant. So in the spell shop, Kiela is the main character. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but she goes from very isolated, very socially awkward, basically being kind of like a hermit by choice, partially because of her grief, to embracing and healing this entire island and growing to be a part of a community. And it's just a really beautiful, resonant thing to read, in addition to the sentient plants and the mer horses and all the fun stuff. So highly recommend The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst.
So what was the process and the timeline like from when you began querying to when you got picked up?
Oh man, that's also a good question. This has been a cool minute, so I got to think about it. So I think I queried, not An Embroidery of Souls, but in general, I think I queried for about 3 years, and I queried 3 different books. For An Embroidery of Souls, I think I was in the query trenches for like 4 to 6 months. I would have to look at my spreadsheet, which is not like super long because response times are really bad. They're really slow. But I got lucky because I queried an agent who was a very fast responding agent, and he liked it and he offered, and that triggers other offers. So that was about how long I was querying. I'm represented by Sarah Fisk at the Tobias Agency. So Sarah and I did a round of revisions and got the book ready. And so I think I signed with Sarah in April, and we started querying, I think, in October. And I had a very lucky journey. I was only on sub for 4 or 5 weeks. It wasn't bad. That's abnormally quick. And so I had this whole spreadsheet ready to go of all the editors, and I was going to write down their feedback and the date we submitted and the date we heard back. And then I just didn't have to do that. And we got lucky. We got a preempt, which for any podcast listeners who aren't sure what that is, it's when the publisher says, we're just going to give you an extra good deal, so that way you don't let anyone else consider it and we don't risk it going to auction. So that kind of sped it up, and it was a very quick sub process for me. So we'll see how it goes next time. I am under no illusions that my next time on sub it's going to go that well. So bracing myself for that.
And An Embroidery of Souls is such a unique, book as a whole. The anxiety rep, the meshing of the German and Mexican culture and lore. So, I will say, as you know.
Thank you, guys. I'm so glad that you liked it. That makes me really happy.
For the majority of our listeners, our regular listeners, I've talked about An Embroidery of Souls a lot. And a bit about the process of being on the panel. And pushing, because I was like, I'm standing 10 toes on Embroidery of Souls. This book is going to make it through. I'll fight everybody.
You went to the mat for me, and I appreciate it.
But I was so honored when I opened the acknowledgments and you put me in there, and I was like,
I was so glad I got to do that, because I know a lot of people, I think, had put in their acknowledgments before, they got the Indies Introduced notification, and mine weren't written yet. So I was like, oh my gosh, I get to include Keely and everyone, and that made me so happy. And I am a big believer in showing gratitude and letting people you appreciate know that you appreciate them. And so it made me really happy that I got to do that for you and got to do that for the panel, because that was just such an incredible thing you all not just did for me, but do for authors generally and do for books generally. So I really am grateful for that.
Yeah, the panel was an experience for sure.
I bet.
When we got to the end and, we had selected everybody, and they were like, and you guys get to, you guys will call the authors, and who do you want to call? And I'm like, I hate talking on the phone. So I was like, God. But I also was like,
so scary.
Oh my God. So that was a fun experience for me too. And just being able to notify you and kind of sharing the excitement together.
Yes.
I went home and I was like, oh my God, guess what? But yeah, no, I was like, okay. I typed up a script and I'm like, okay, I'm going to read off the script and I'm going to, because I was like, I hate calling. And then we started.
You sound like me on the phone. Okay. I am sorry I took you off your script, but yeah, that was such a lovely call. I remember I was in the car with my husband, so he heard me getting all excited and had no context for what was going on. But it was a really fun time. You were the first person I talked to who, obviously you were on the panel, you were part of the process, but who also was just a reader who like wasn't my agent or my editor, like someone at the publishing house who was like, I just read this and no one is paying me to like your book. I just like your book. And I was like, oh my God, like, people might like my book. Like that was like a moment that stands out to me and like, oh my God, the dream is coming true. So I really appreciate that a lot.
And I think I have one more question.
Okay, let's go.
That is, have you had any fun fan interactions so far?
Oh man. Definitely have gotten to had a few, especially at Romantasy BookCon was such a good time. I really enjoyed talking with readers who are like prospective authors and like have their own books and like that makes me so happy. There was someone in particular at Romantasy BookCon. My agent met her like the first night and like pitched my book to her just because they were at one of the social events talking and I was at a different social event, you know, being awkward and not knowing who to talk to. And this woman was so nice. Like she approached us later that night when we were having dinner and like showed us that she had bought my book. And then she came up to the booth later and was like, it was either her or her daughter was telling me that she got like 8 other people to buy my book, which like I really could use those 8 sales. So like, thank you. She's just so wonderful and so lovely. And so like, those interactions absolutely stand out of like, what a wonderful, lovely person and what an exciting thing to just get to interact with people who love books, who maybe will love my book, right? So
that's all I have.
Okay.
Cool. Yep. Well, I don't have any questions for me, so.
I finally got to read it after Keely talked about it for 6 months. So.
Keely, thank you for talking about it for 6 months. Thank you for reading it. I appreciate both of you so much.
She really does.
I feel like you are like one of my number one fans, and I really appreciate that. Yeah, I don't have like a ton of fans yet, so
I'll head up the fan club.
Yeah.
I noticed your sweatshirt says Death by TBR, and I just want you to know, so relatable, and I really love that. So
before we end, where can everyone like find you? Do you have a website, social medias?
Oh yes. Probably, so Instagram is probably the best place. I'm really awkward on Instagram and all social media, but I am doing my best. So I'm at Ruby Martinez author on Instagram, and you can see like my drop downs if you want to find my website. There's a link on there. I can't remember my website link right now, so that's why I'm not saying it. I'm on Twitter, but I haven't posted in forever, and Twitter's kind of dead. So definitely Instagram at Ruby Martinez author is the best place to find me. I am going to work on posting more now that I'm off deadline. So hopefully new content coming soon. I'll do my best. I'm not a Canva wizard, but I'm trying. But thank you guys so much for having me on, by the way. I really appreciate it. It's always fun to come and talk books. So I will definitely listen and be like, oh my gosh, I sounded so awkward, but I really appreciate you both so much.
Thanks for talking to us.
Yeah.
Of course. No, I'm absolutely glad to. It makes me happy. It's a fun time.